शंभो कोटि नमन दिगंबरा,
कोटि कोटि प्रणाम शंभो
कोटि नमन दिगंबरा। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः।
Welcome to Satsang. So beautiful to be together. Starting as usual with a question that comes in advance from our online family, then we will open it up to any questions that anyone here might have. Can science lead us to the ultimate truth? It depends what type of science you're studying. When most of us think of science, typically the purview of science, the scope of science, is what the tools of science can measure. It's things that can be seen with a microscope or a telescope, things that have a weight, a density, a size. You can measure it with a tape measure. You can stick it in a beaker. You can put it in a crucible and turn on a Bunsen burner. Well, if those are your tools, no, science isn't going to show you the ultimate truth because it's limited to those tools. It can only show you things that have a mass, that have a size, that would change forms if put on a Bunsen burner, that can be seen with that telescope or microscope. And of course, when we speak about ultimate truth, when we speak about spirit and soul and consciousness and divinity, there's no size to it. There's no shape to it because by its nature, it's infinite and therefore can take infinite forms, infinite shapes. So if you only use those tools, then no, science can't show it to you. But yoga is also a science. Meditation is a science. We speak about the spiritual sciences. So if you broaden your vision of science to include yoga, to include meditation, to include your personal spiritual practice, then yeah, absolutely it can show you the ultimate truth. But just to have fun, sticking with what we would call external kind of hardcore science, your biology, chemistry, physics for a moment. Because I think when the person asked the question, they weren't talking about the science of yoga or the science of meditation, but more our biology, chemistry, physics, etc. So as we know them with their theorems and their tools, no, they cannot show ultimate truth. But if your mind and heart are open, they can point you in that direction. If you are prepared to be open to findings in a way that's more expansive than what the world of science knows, then it can. So for example, I'll throw out at you some recent findings of what you would call hardcore science, or actual institutional science, whether it's social science, whether it's chemistry, whether it's physics, psychology, but our, academic sciences. So one fun piece of data is that it's been shown that people who are spiritual, religious, who regularly attend a place of worship, doesn't matter what your religion is, but a temple, a synagogue, a church, a gurdwara, a mosque, the base of the tree in your backyard that, you have sanctified as holy, whatever it may be, but people who regularly attend a place of worship and who self-identify as very spiritual or very religious actually live longer and are healthier than people who don't. There's lots of studies done by places like Dartmouth University, Princeton University. I'm not talking about yoga studios. Esteemed universities have done lots of that research. Now, that's good science. But if your mind and heart is open, you would say, how does that work? What is it? What is it that our spiritual connection gives us that actually enables the physical body to be healthier and stronger? And as you're open to that, if you're really open to it, that question in and of itself, that inquiry in and of itself, is going to take you on a path to see and discover your ultimate truth. One of my favorites recently is from quantum physics. It's something they call the observer effect. Now, in Newtonian physics, when I was studying physics, I never studied it very intently, but you had to take physics in high school, and then I had to take a physics class my first year at university. We were told there were two things. Waves means energy, and particles means mass. You've got energy, you've got matter. They are different, behave differently, made of different stuff, totally different. Well, as the years went by, it's been several decades since I've been out of school, and as the years went by, first they started saying things like, well, sometimes a wave behaves like a particle, and sometimes a particle behaves like a wave. And so it's not always quite so cut and dry what's what. Now there's something called the observer effect that takes that a whole level deeper, which is who's watching can actually determine whether that thing you're looking at behaves like a wave or behaves like a particle. Now, that is hardcore science saying exactly what hardcore spirituality says, which is you create your own existence. You create your own world. I mean, there should be nothing more black and white, scientific, than whether something is a particle or a wave. Is it matter or is it energy? And science was really sure, like they are different things. Now they say, well, you know, depends who's looking. What does that even mean? I mean, if your mind and your heart are open spiritually, that is extraordinarily exciting. Because what that means is that the sheer power of you, the witness, you, the one who is watching, you, the one who has some kind of conscious, unconscious, preconceived notion of whether you're seeing a wave or a particle, is actually changing that which you are looking at. There's another concept in quantum physics that talks about something called string theory. This has been around for a long time, which is the idea that everything's connected in the universe. And that if over here I do something, anything, it's impacting those on the other end of the string, wherever they may be. As though if you could imagine physically, if the world literally were made of, think of a spider's web, a very intricate spider's web. If you pull on the end of one of the strings in one place, and somebody's holding on to the other end somewhere else, obviously it's going to impact them. It's going to pull them forward. It's going to send them back. So string theory says that our entire universe is connected by these energetic strings, and that literally what you do anywhere is impacting not just one person. It's not like one string and I've got one end and you've got the other end and you go off to Moscow and I pull it and you feel it. But that we are connected intricately to the rest of the universe. Now, again, if your heart and your mind are open, even a crack, that should just blast them open to reality. We are not separate. We are not separate. We are one. But what that has to mean, and follow me scientifically here, it has to mean that we are not our physical bodies. Because if each of us is simply our physical body, well, we are well aware that they are not touching. Like, here is my body over here. There's a lot of empty space. You're over there. A lot of empty space. Then he's here. She's there in between. If we're only our physical bodies, then we're not connected. At least not connected across large distances. If I've got a fever, a really high fever, and I'm emanating super high temperatures, and you're this close from me, you might feel it. But you're not going to feel it over there. Even times of COVID taught us that, a good 6 feet, you want to be extra safe, go 10 feet. And even if somebody coughs or sneezes and sends all of their, particles from within them into the air, if you're a good distance away, you'll be fine. Don't worry. Just make sure you've got your distance. But string theory says you could be on the other end of the world. No social distancing. We're connected. Which means to me, by definition, that we're not our physical bodies. Because I am not physically connected to somebody sitting in Helsinki right now, in Finland. There's no physical part of me that's connected to that person. But if string theory is right, and we are connected, it means that there is an aspect of us, a core aspect of us, that is much bigger, much more infinite and infinitely connected than the physical body. Spirit, soul, consciousness, so this into spirituality. So, can science take you to the ultimate truth? As I began, not with beakers and Bunsen burners, but with an open heart and an open mind, some of the recent discoveries, if we really allow them to percolate in our consciousness, they absolutely can give us a doorway into the world of spirituality, a doorway into that spiritual truth that you might not have thought science could give you. And this is where it's so much fun how much they actually overlap, because so many of us think that science and spirituality are completely separate disciplines and they have nothing in common. But the higher science gets, the deeper science gets, the more it actually starts to, quote unquote, discover that which spirituality has been telling us for thousands of years. One of my favorite pieces of evidence for that is something that my beautiful, beautiful spiritual brother and dear, dear friend, Dr. Bruce Lipton, talks about, where there's, if you get a brain scan, when most of us think of a brain scan, you think about lots of electrodes literally attached to your skull with wires coming out of them, and they're measuring your brain waves. But there's now a new type of brain wave monitoring machine, brain scanning machine, that actually sits a few inches away from the skull. It doesn't actually touch you. And it still picks up your brainwave patterns. Now again, that's another one that if you really let that in, it just blows your mind wide open. Because what does that mean? It means we are literally emanating our thoughts. Our sages and saints and rishis have said for thousands of years, your thoughts are creating your world. Thoughts are things, they are creating. And we think, nah, they're just in my head. Kya fark padta? What does it matter? It's just a thought. But here's a piece of science that shows you that your thoughts are so powerful that a machine can read the brainwaves that emanate from your head out into the world. So if you allow yourself to really be open to the discoveries of science, then it definitely can open doors to the ultimate truth. Because the truth is, if the truth is infinite and ultimate, we should actually be able to get there through anything. There should be an infinite number of paths to it, an infinite number of ways of accessing it. And so I'm sure if we sat here all night, we could think of more and more ways, that more and more paths that we didn't necessarily think of as spiritual paths could be used to access that ultimate truth. But the key underlying factor of them all is the mind and the heart have to be open to the presence of that ultimate truth. Any questions here? Any questions that anyone here might have? Yes.
Namaste.
Namaste.
I'm blessed to be here in this presence and absorb this wisdom
No problem.
who's coming.
No problem.
And it's like a feeling when, for some people, when I'm seeing, listening, or just getting in contact, it's so easy and so light to be in that contact. And with someone, I feel like I want to close my doors more, or keep the distance. But so like everyone is so connected and in unity and in divine, but still this separation existing. So why it's here?
So, separation, if we're all so one and connected and feel this so true, why is there still so much separation, right? Ego. In one word, that's why we have separation. Ego. Because here's what it looks like. So we begin at the beginning, which is that each of us is soul, spirit, consciousness, love, energy, right? Doesn't matter what word you use, but that is the core of who we are. Then we have this body, and we take this body in order to fulfill our karmic journey in this particular lifetime. Part of this body is a physical brain. It sits in our skull, our gray matter, our white matter. It's made up of chemicals and electricity. I mean, that's how it works. It's made up of a lot of other things, but it works by chemistry and electricity. Within the brain, there is something we call mind. An aspect of the mind is what we call ego. Now, the ego is rooted upon separation. If you study child development, what we know is actually the development of the ego is very healthy. When children are very, very young, they feel very much at one with the world. There is no separation in a young child's mind. That's why when we think back to, being in the womb or, drinking milk from our mother's breast, there's such a beautiful, warm feeling of just like, oh my God, if I could just go back to that. And it's because those are the days before we realized we were separate. In the child's experience, they are one with that breast. They are one with the mother. They are one with all. There is no separation. What happens as they start to get a little bit older is you start to see how that negatively impacts their ability to be what we would call socialized. Right? Now, I'm not sure it's such a good thing or a bad thing, but point is that we've got our systems of socialization. For example, this is mine, that's yours. I don't take what's yours because I understand it's yours, not mine. With young kids, you frequently have to say to them, don't eat Joey's cookies. Those are Joey's cookies. Those are not your cookies. Put his cookies back. You finished your cookies. You cannot have Joey's cookies. If you want one, you have to ask him. Right? We teach this to our kids because they don't understand. In their mind, it's them and it's cookies. And some cookies are on this plate, and some cookies are on that plate, and it's cookies, and me, and we're one, and they're just gonna eat them. We yell at them, and we teach them, not yours. These are your cookies. See, you finished them. Those are Joey's, not yours. And slowly, slowly, they start to learn where they end and the rest of the world begins. That they are separate and different. And then, of course, it goes as we get older. We start to develop an identity. I am female or male or any of the other options that people are realizing these days. We start to realize that we have a color. And that not only do we notice that, but that other people notice it, that they respond to us and judge us based on it. We start to notice that there's more and more differences between us. And we start to get more and more attached to this body. The more different I feel from others, the more attached to mine I become. The thicker the lines between me and you become. And as that happens, you could say suffering begins. Because then we feel very separate. Then, for example, we're not part of that clique or that crowd. They don't want to eat lunch with us. We feel left out. We're not chosen for the baseball team. That person is popular, I am not popular. Separation and suffering. We start to have envy, jealousy. Then greed brews. We want more and more. We feel like we are not enough. So many of us grow with this sense of, I'm not enough. I'm not smart enough, beautiful enough, athletic enough, popular enough, funny enough. And so we start to crave more and more and more to somehow make ourselves feel full. And the more we do that, the more the ego grows, because the more I need to grab and grasp, the more identified I stay with not just my body, but my possessions, my bank account, my job, my role, right? Don't you try to take my job, this is my job, right? We get this is the stuff that stress is made of. Ask people, what their stress is made of, and a lot of what you're going to hear is kind of workplace competition. This guy's trying to steal my job. She steals credit for my work. Right? We become very protective over that which is mine. This is all ego. Now remember, it began actually as a service to us. It helped us remember not to eat Joey's cookies. But then it got taken a little too far, and it went from being helpful to hurtful. And so this is the cause of separation. And of course, it's not just our own ignorance. We are, from the time we're very young, we're constantly being socialized and indoctrinated to believe we are different. Oh, she's the pretty one. You're the smart one. Right? It means I'm the smart one, but it also means I'm not so pretty. Right? It means there's a difference. People tell us that all the time. Why can't you be like so-and-so? He does all his homework so nicely. Why can't you? We're constantly being compared and contrasted and judged. And People are always telling you by the color you are, oh, you are that color, you can't do this, or you are that religion, we don't do this, those people, these people. So we spend the first decades of our life, kind of wherever we turn, being hit with ways of learning to separate ourselves, ways to build an identity in a box. And then we embark on a spiritual path and we realize, oh my God, I've been brainwashed. Wow. We're all in different boxes, but we're the same stuff. The containers are different, but the contents are the same. And so we slowly start to break down those identities. We slowly start to re-identify as content rather than container, as essence rather than form, and to see each other like that. And that's where we come back to oneness. But it takes some undoing. That's why we always say meditation is an undoing of all of what you've learned about yourself. It's not becoming something else. It's simply unbecoming who you've spent the last decades being indoctrinated to believe you are. And then you experience the truth. Beautiful. Yes.
Namaskar. It's such a pleasure to hear you in the company. I have a question. Basically, you talked about the strings theory. So
About the?
strings theory.
Yes, string theory, yes.
So the thought that we emanate, it basically emanates in the space, be it positive, negative. We are humans sometimes. So my question is, is it our thoughts are creating our ecosystem, whatever we are thinking, okay, at any point in time, it can be conscious or unconscious, positive, negative, greed, selfish, it can be anything. Sometimes it is our control, sometimes it is not. So is it creating a kind of ecosystem back from the nature, some environment, and if yes, how do we control it?
Great. So are our thoughts creating the unconscious ones, the conscious ones? Is it creating kind of an ecosystem in the environment around us that impacts us? Absolutely. Absolutely it is. This is why step one of spiritual practice is become conscious, become mindful, become aware. Learn to control your thoughts. They absolutely create our world. Now, there's many ways they do that. Some are on the unconscious level. So for example, if I'm constantly telling myself, God, you are so stupid. You're so stupid. You're worthless. You're never going to be able to do anything. You've got no abilities, no talent. My God. Well, I'm going to create a situation in which I don't actually ever succeed. And I may consciously wonder, why don't I ever succeed, never connecting the dots between this unconscious, constant berating of myself. Constant telling myself that I'm not going to succeed, that I'm not smart enough, that I'm not worthy, that I'm an idiot. I mean, think about how many times most of us say to ourselves during the course of the day, oh my God, you're such an idiot. Like, how could you have said that? How could you have done that? Now, every time you say that to yourself, it's creating an impression in your psyche of, I'm an idiot, and I am more likely to believe it every time I hear it. So when I sit down to actually do something, a project, an idea, a piece of work, I've got this whole psyche of, I'm useless, I'm worthless, I'm an idiot, I'm stupid. So I'm not going to actually put in the intelligence or the ability into something that I might actually have, because I don't think I have it. And so I'm constantly sabotaging myself in that unconscious way. Another way that it works is with people around us. You know, if you're really negative and judgmental, well, the world acts the way you think they are. My favorite story about that is the man who's walking down a path in the village, and he comes to an older Baba who's sitting on the side of the road, and sitting next to the Baba is a young boy. The man asks the Baba, he says, how are the people in the village up ahead? And the Baba says, well, where are you coming from? And the man says, I'm coming from such and such a village. And so the Baba says, well, how are the people there? And the man says, oh, they are wonderful. Such beautiful people. Honest and loving and caring and sharing and generous. And the Baba says, great news. The people in the village up ahead are even better. So the man very happily walks by. Another man walks up and says to the Baba, how are the people in that village up ahead? And the Baba asks him the same question. Where are you coming from? How were the people there? Turns out he's coming from the same village the other guy was. But he says to the Baba, oh my God, those people were awful. Liars, cheats, thieves. I couldn't wait to get out of there. And the Baba says, well, I've got some bad news for you. Because the people in the village where you're going are just as bad. And as the man walks by, the little boy sitting with him says, but Babaji, how is that possible? There's only one village up ahead. How is it possible that you tell the first guy they're wonderful, the second guy they're horrible? And the Baba says, because whatever we're looking for, that's what we're going to find. The first man clearly saw people with the lens of light, of love, of generosity, of acceptance, of compassion. And he got what he was expecting. He was expecting people to be good and kind and honest, and that's what he saw, that's what he got. And the second was expecting the opposite. And it's not just a matter of vision. We literally get from people that which we are expecting to get from people. It's not just that we see them differently. People rise or fall to an occasion based on how we go into that interaction. They've done all kinds of studies on this in schools, of kids literally becoming smart or becoming stupid based on what teachers were told about them in randomized studies. Teachers are randomly told, these kids are smart, these kids are not so smart. And they treat the kids accordingly, and at the end of the year, the kids who were randomly selected to be the smart ones actually end up smarter. They actually are doing better across the board on all their exams than the kids who were randomly selected and told to the teachers were the not smart ones. But it goes also on a conscious level. So all those levels are the sort of unconscious, subconscious levels as we move through the world. But on a conscious level also, we know that what we think has the power, when we are doing it consciously, to impact everything ranging from the rate at which plants and flowers grow, the rates at which seeds germinate, the rates at which cancer cells sitting in a petri dish divide. Now, these are amazing studies, and they've been done by top universities. It's called the power of intention. It's an amazing, amazing bit of research. People sitting in one part of the world intending means very consciously, deliberately thinking in a focused way, have been shown over and over and over again to be able to impact so many different things in places across the world. There's an author and a researcher named Lynn McTaggart who's written a couple of different books on this. The Intention Experiment, The Power of Eight. If you're interested in it, they're really exciting books and pieces of research that show over and over again how what we think, consciously, deliberately, actually manifests. So, yes, your thoughts are creating a huge ecosystem in your environment and across the world. In order to have the impact across the world, they've got to be more conscious. They've got to be more deliberate. They've got to be more focused. But in terms of creating our own ecosystem here, my own world, all of our unconscious and subconscious programming is hard at work creating your world and filling it with all the people you are expecting to find there. So this is why we learn to watch our thoughts. I saw a beautiful sign many years ago that said, "Watch your thoughts and you will see the future." So, yes, it's the most important place to start. By watching them, we learn to control them. We learn to choose them. Which ones are we going to go with? Which ones are we not? Beautiful. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. A beautiful morning and day to our family joining us online through the gift of technology. I look so forward to seeing all of you tomorrow. And so much love to you all.